Brennan here at the National Hurricane Center. It's around 11:45 a.m. Eastern Time on Sunday, October 6th, coming on this morning with an update on what's going to be a very dangerous situation playing out for Florida this week with what's now Tropical Storm Milton, which is quickly getting better organized over the southwestern Gulf of Mexico this morning. We've had the NOAA Hurricane Hunter aircraft in the storm and found that the maximum sustained winds are now up near 65 miles per hour, seeing an eye wall develop based on the data we're getting from the aircraft, seeing those winds come up, the pressure falling. Currently, Milton is more than 800 miles away from the west coast of Florida, now moving off to the east-southeast at 6 miles per hour. The track forecast has changed a little bit this morning. We've seen that south of due east motion, and but again, we're expecting Milton to move slowly generally towards the east over the next 24 to 36 hours, and then move more quickly towards the east, northeast, and northeast as we move into the middle portions of the week. And that's going to bring a strengthening Milton over the Florida Peninsula during the day, Wednesday into Wednesday night, and then across Florida into the western Atlantic as we go from Wednesday night into Thursday. Now, we are expecting Milton, unfortunately, to rapidly intensify here in the next 12 to 24 hours, becoming a major hurricane by Monday evening, and then be a powerful hurricane as it moves east-northeastward to northeastward across the Gulf of Mexico from Tuesday into Wednesday, and be near major hurricane or at major hurricane intensity when it reaches the west coast of Florida during the day Wednesday. We're also expecting Milton's wind field to grow in size as it approaches the Florida Peninsula. So we're going to see widespread impacts, the potential for life-threatening storm surge inundation, dangerous hurricane force winds along both coasts of Florida and even across portions of the peninsula as the storm is expected to maintain hurricane intensity as it moves across Florida, and the potential for heavy rainfall and flooding. So let's look a little bit at the timing this morning. This is the timing, the most likely time of arrival of those tropical storm force winds along the west coast of Florida. It's going to be in the overnight into early morning hours on Wednesday. So the main message here in terms of preparedness is you want to have your preparations done by nightfall Tuesday. Be in your safe place overnight into Wednesday, and be prepared to shelter in place during the day Wednesday across much of the Florida Peninsula. Be in a safe place. Follow any evacuation orders if you are given those by your local officials, especially in those vulnerable storm surge areas. If we move on to what's going on now across Florida, we actually have some heavy rainfall and flooding risk currently across much of the Florida Peninsula, with heavy rain extending from the Florida Keys up through much of the Florida Peninsula. The combination of the rainfall we're seeing now and the rainfall associated with Milton is going to result in widespread rainfall totals of 5 to 8 inches across the Florida Keys, much of the Florida Peninsula. We could see isolated rainfall totals as high as 12 inches, especially where the core of Milton moves through the state. The risk of flash flooding over the next several days is highlighted in two areas, actually in southeast Florida today with some of the heavy rainfall, and a broader risk of flash flooding today and tomorrow. This level 3 out of 4 risk you see that includes places like Tampa, Orlando, the I-4 corridor up into northeast Florida is really targeted in the Wednesday time frame into Thursday. Now, this flash flooding risk will obviously move around with the exact track of Milton. So again, just going back to the forecast here, we don't want people to get too focused on the exact track of the center. We're still more than 3 days away from a potential landfall. Our average track forecast error at those lead times is around 100 miles. So everybody in the Florida Peninsula needs to be preparing and getting ready for Milton and its impacts, and checking back in for future updates. Now, let's talk a little bit about preparedness. You want to know what your risk is. You want to know if you live in a storm surge evacuation zone, particularly along the west coast of Florida, including the Tampa Bay area, Port Charlotte, Fort Myers, even down to Naples. Be on the lookout for any evacuation orders or other advice you're given by your local officials, and please follow that advice. Again, know what the resilience of your home to wind is. If you live in a mobile home, you may need to evacuate away from tropical storm or hurricane force winds, and identify all the vulnerable structural risks that your home might have and be aware of those. Again, talking about evacuations, know your evacuation zone in Florida. They generally run in terms of letters from A to AB all the way up to F. You can go to floridadisaster.org/know, KNOW, to find out if you live in an evacuation zone and what that evacuation zone is. And finally, a little bit more about preparedness. Think about this if you're in that area of risk. You think about how you're going to prepare your home. You might put shutters up. You might want to cover your windows, gather loose items that are outside that could become projectiles. Think about your sheltering options. Try to remember you don't have to drive hundreds of miles to get to a safe place out of that storm surge evacuation zone. Often it's only tens of miles to get to a shelter, a safe place to stay with a friend or loved one, or a hotel to ride out the storm. Think about your pets. get your supplies ready. Be prepared for, again, multiple days without access to fresh food or water, power. Think about charging your devices, batteries, any medical needs you might have. Get those ready in advance of the storm, and help your neighbors, especially the vulnerable and elderly in your community, to get ready for the storm as well. And again, follow any evacuation orders you're given. So let's wrap up here with the key messages from Milton this morning. Milton is expected to quickly intensify and become a hurricane by tonight, and then a major hurricane as it moves eastward and then northeastward across the Gulf of Mexico toward the Florida Peninsula by midweek. There's going to be significant impacts, life-threatening impacts that are going to play out in terms of storm surge, dangerous hurricane force winds, and the potential for pretty substantial flooding due to rainfall across much of the Florida Peninsula. So you're going to want to come back here to the Hurricane Center at hurricanes.gov. We'll be with you throughout the event. You can find more information from your local National Weather Service office at weather.gov. And stay tuned. We'll be back with you later today. I'm Mike Brennan here at the National Hurricane Center.